Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Talkin Movies Double Feature. As always, I am your host, the real Geno Reynolds, and today we're going to be talking about two movies that I saw back-to-back. So I experienced a weird double feature, so now I'm going to review it, and you can experience the weird double feature. Now, granted, I'm not going to talk about everything that happened in the theater when I went to go see these movies, because that's another story for another day. But what I do want to talk about is these two movies that I was going to do separate reviews for, but neither of them are really worth talking about separately, so I'm just going to cram them together, just mishmash them together the way it was for me. Now, I will warn you, there probably will be spoilers in these movies, but come on, let's be honest. Both of these movies, you know what they were going to be, and especially with one of them being a remake. So anyway, without further ado, the first thing we're going to talk about is The Prodigy. Now, what this movie is about, when we start off, we get to meet our movie's serial killer, and he's had a victim get away from him, and this victim ends up leading the police to him, and this guy gets croaked. In parallel to this, we see a young mother, played by Taylor Schilling, also known as the probably least most interesting character on Orange is the New Black. Anyway, she's having a baby, and this baby is born at the exact same time as this serial killer dies. And so she has the baby, and the baby ends up being somewhat gifted in some areas. He speaks before a year old, and little things like that. He learns really quick, and we go through about 8 years of his life really quickly. And we begin to see that some of his not so developed senses, like his social behavior, starts to take a dark turn. Okay, where this movie fails is right at the beginning, because this movie has no surprises whatsoever. The movie is telling you, maybe not the how, but what is happening from the get-go. We get to see the serial killer die in one state, and then this baby's born in another state, and somehow his soul has began to take over this kid. Somehow, at random, somehow his soul traveled over, I don't remember where the serial killer was, but he goes to Ohio, and he's able to take over this kid, just at random. Granted, maybe there was some deeper lore to this, because the dude gets naked before he dies. And, of course, Austin Powers style, we see things like guns and police officers block seeing the guy's pee-pee. He gets naked, so maybe he's doing some form of ritual. I don't know. But this movie has this whole idea that when someone doesn't have or hasn't been able to accomplish what they were on this world for, that they can take over someone else's body. And the longer they're in there, the more they take over. But normally, the example we're given with another guy, with this doctor that's studying this, is that it's always a good thing. Like, this one kid didn't get to, or one guy didn't get to see his mom before he died, like, because she was sick or something. He came back as this kid and got to visit his mother and be with her when she passed away and everything. But now all of a sudden, apparently this serial killer can do it. In a way, it kind of feels like Chucky, but without the doll. Like, this guy all of a sudden can just, I'm going to send my soul to this kid states over, and I can take over his body. And yeah, it ultimately fails because there's no surprise. It would have been nice to, I mean, it would have saved the film, no, but it would have been nice if there was some air of mystery. Now, they do try to give you an air of mystery with how far along is the takeover of the kid. And we learn, of course, when we finally learn about this guy, of course we know he's a serial killer and he's evil, but we learn how manipulative he is, and that he's a natural-born liar and a manipulator. And So knowing this, we know, well, chances are, even when he's talking like he's the kid, he's effing with his mom and his dad. And so there's no mystery there either. You know how the movie's going to end that way. I would have been surprised, and again, I'm talking spoilers here. I would have been surprised if everything ended up happy. And even though the way it ends, they kind of sequel bait it, and there's no point. I mean, it's not real sequel bait, but it's like, well, we did leave this thread. So there's no surprises, though. We know how it's going to end. If the movie would have ended with everything being happy, that would have shocked me. Then again, the movie wouldn't have been good either, because the story's just not good anyway. The story could have been good if there was some mystery there, but the story is just kind of paint by numbers. You have this guy taking over the kid, the mom seeing weird stuff, like the kid will turn around and the guy's face will be there, and then she'll freak out, and then she'll go and look at the kid, and he'll be normal again, or he'll say something weird when she's not looking. There's this many a times where she goes and checks on him in bed, and there's once where he's laying there and she turns away, and all of a sudden she hears the kid say, "Go F yourself," and she turns around, it's like, I can't believe he said that. So there's just things like that. There's things where he's speaking in a different language and she records, and of course she runs into the right people that know this stuff. So there's just really no surprise. If I give any credit to this movie, it's that the kid is creepy. Jackson Robert Scott does a decent job at being the creepy kid. Now, that being said, isn't anything original? Not really. There's a couple scenes where just the way he's looking, the things he says works. But that being said, kids that are doing roles like this are usually creepy to me, even in the worst movies. So whether it be a great movie like The Exorcist or a crappy movie like the Nightmare on Elm Street, where they had the kid, I think it was 4 or 5, I think it was 5, where the baby's born and he's just kind of creepy, and just the kid, a creepy kid's a creepy kid, and it's always going to be disturbing. But the movie itself is just kind of boring. It's not really worth talking about. It's not really worth seeing. If you're going to see it, rent it. It's definitely, and I'm being generous, a rental at best. So The Prodigy is just a paint-by-numbers horror film that I'm probably going to forget about the second I stop talking about it. Alright, now we're going to move on and talk about the remake of What Women Want, which is now called What Men Want, starring Taraji P. Henson. What this movie is about, see, the first movie was Mel Gibson trying to understand women so he could succeed in the cosmetics world, where, as in this movie, is Taraji P. Henson trying to know what men want so she can succeed as being a sports agent in a male-dominated profession. This movie is everything I thought it was going to be, whether for good or bad. If you've seen the trailer of this movie, you've pretty much seen the movie. You pretty much know what you're going to get. What this movie is when she gets these powers, she does start to learn, what men really want. She's able to play the game. But of course she gets caught up in some lies. And that involves the love story in this movie, where of course she lies about some things, and of course she hurts the guy, and of course she learns her lesson, and of course she gets back with him in the end. So you know how that story's going to go. With the story of her career, what it is she's trying to land this big client who's basically it's like the whole LeVar Ball situation, where you've got an overbearing dad who's trying to run his son's career, and the son probably wants something else, but daddy wants what daddy wants, and she has to figure all that out and end up working with him and giving the kid what he really wants. He wants to stay home and play for the Atlanta Hawks, and the dad ends up making all these stupid decisions. Basically LeVar Ball. And so that story, how that's going to end up. There's side stories of Taraji P. Henson having lessons to learn, also, not with just for the relationship, but with her friends and with her co-workers. And of course, with her having to learn things, she learns that it's not always everybody else's fault. Sometimes it's her fault, and sometimes people do respect her, and but she just comes off as terrible, so they can't like her. So she learns our lessons. There's a story about her assistant who wants to be an agent, and you know how that's going to turn out. There's also a side story of her assistant meeting that special someone, and you know how that's going to turn out. And there's just so many of the stories, you know what's going to happen. There's really not much to say about the movie. It's just, you know how every single little thing's going to turn out. You know it's going to be one of those feel-good movies where everything turns out the way it's supposed to be. The good people get their right thing. The bad people get their comeuppance. It's just that kind of movie. You know what it's going to be, so what's the problem? Well, those movies can be fine if, say, the writing's good or the jokes are good, but this movie doesn't really have any of that. A lot of the stuff you hear in people's minds, there's some stuff that are trying to be funny and some stuff that are trying to be serious. If you've seen the stuff in the trailer, there's some of those that are extended, like an example, the scene where she's in the hospital after she had just hit her head. Some of the stuff the doctor's saying is extended. Of course, that comes into play later when he basically tells her, you know, he didn't know that she could hear his thoughts, but her calling him out on his thoughts changed his life. So there's all that. She starts to learn that, you know, I did some good. But you just know how everything's going to turn out, but it's just it. The writing's not that great. The jokes aren't that funny. When they try to be really over the top, like with the psychic lady, that stuff's just stupid. It's just not funny at all. There's just not a lot here to warrant a remake. Now, I'm not saying that honestly, I didn't go back and watch the original again, so I don't remember. I remember it being kind of funny at first, and it got like ultra serious at the end. And this one tries to play more like a straight up comedy or rom-com in some ways. But it didn't do enough to say, yeah, you should have remade this movie. And they wanted to do the gender flip, and that's fine. I mean, if you were going to do it, at least they did something like that instead of making What Women Want Again. There's jokes in here, of course, about things like Me Too and stuff like that. I mean, it's trying to be a trendy film, and honestly, I was sitting there and I was just kind of bored. I cracked a smile at a few of the jokes, but really there was nothing there. Any of the good jokes they spoiled in the trailer, like the kid wearing her underwear on his head and saying like "Welcome to Wakanda" or whatever. That would have been funny had I not already seen it multiple times when I've seen the trailer in theater. So like the last movie, this is a rental at best, and again, I'm being generous. I do like Taraji P. Henson. I just want to see her do better things. I know she's been better in more serious movies, and I know she's got some serious movies coming out, and I'm happy about that because, you know, she may be having a great time doing these movies, but these movies, I don't know, she's fine in them. I'm not saying she's bad, but I would rather see her do the more serious stuff because I think she's better at those. Again, there's some scenes in this movie where she's kind of funny, but again, you see in a trailer, like the scene where she's having sex with that dude, and he's like, "Why don't you ever open your eyes?" She opens her eyes, and and she gives him that weird look, and that would have been again funny if I hadn't seen it. So yeah, either of these movies I wouldn't really recommend. If you really, really, really must see them, just wait till they come out on video or Netflix or whatever, because honestly, they're not worth the price of admission. That's going to be all for this edition of Talkin Movies Double Feature. As always, I am your host, The Real Geno Reynolds. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to The Real Geno YouTube channel, like this video, and if you have anything to say about either of these movies, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Until next time, see you later.